Hello, hello. I'm back with round 9 from the 2025 Grenke Open. This was the last round, and going into this game, I had 5.5 points out of 8. So far, my tournament was kind of up and down, and very much just basically relied on this final game to see if I could put up a decent result. So for this game, I was paired against a player from Singapore by the name of Jinghan Cameron Goh. And his rating is only 2100, but actually in the tournament I had seen that he had been performing extremely well. And going into this game, he actually had a performance rating of like 2450, which means that he was on track for an IM norm. But the interesting thing is, although he's playing me, an international master, my rating is 2351 for this game. So what that would mean is that if we drew this game, that would probably push his performance down because he was right on the cusp of 2450. So, and that would, in my mind, I was thinking would prevent him from getting the norm. So I didn't know exactly if he was playing for the norm or what he needed. Maybe he only needed a draw. It's hard to say, but yeah, going into the game, I just had that in my mind that like, oh, he might be playing for a norm, and I should keep this in mind as well. So I start the game with knight f3, knight f6, g3, and I played knight f3 a couple times in this tournament. The first game I played it, I lost, and I won the second game. So this was, I believe, my third game with knight f3, c5, bishop g2, knight c6. And I didn't have any special preparation for this one. This is the final round. This is the second round of the day, so there really wasn't a lot of time to look up my opponent, and so I wasn't, sure what he's going to do in the opening. So it's kind of just taking it move by move. And here after knight c6, white has to make a decision because black is ready to play e5 and essentially force white into playing, if I castle, for example, e5. This would be a kind of like King's Indian defense with reverse colors, which I don't really mind playing. I'm, a tried and true King's Indian player, but okay, with white, I feel like I want to try to get more than just some kind of opening from the black side. So I played c4, which I believe is one of the critical moves here, just stopping black from getting a big center. Black could still go e5 here, but then it's not as easy for them to get d5 in. So for example, knight c3, if black plays d5, I'm pretty sure I can take on e5 here, assuming the tactics work out. But this is a very typical tactic in the King's Indian, and the idea is like knight c3, knight takes c6, and I think white is, well, we've already picked up a pawn, and I think we're doing well in these tactics. So c4, black goes d5 right away, takes, knight c3, knight c7. And this is actually a pretty normal line. Like most games here continue with d3, black goes e5, and we essentially get a reverse accelerated dragon, Marazzi position, where I think white is supposed to be able to fight for some advantage here, but it's really like not so simple. Like I think the main line runs knight d2, bishop e7, knight c4, maybe f6, castles, somewhere white plays f4. And yeah, I believe this position is very playable and likely just fine for black. During the game, I wasn't sure about all this, and I hadn't prepared the opening, so around here I was basically on my own and not really wanting to go into this structure because, again, I just felt like, okay, I'm playing the black side of a Marazzi. Why would I want this without really having a ton of experience in these positions? So I started thinking here, and I was just trying to come up with like something tricky or fresh that I could play because my opponent was still playing pretty quickly, so I definitely wanted to try and get him out of book. And after spending a lot of time, I think I'd already used up like 15 minutes by the time I made my move, which was 7-8-3. And the idea of this move can be seen after black's next move e5, which was played. Now I go b4. And yeah, somehow I'd figured out that this is actually playable for white. The idea, of course, if black takes on b4 twice, let's say with the bishop, then knight takes e5, allows white to win the pawn back, because if knight takes e5, there's queen a4 check. And then after knight c6, I'm taking on c6 with check. Takes, queen takes b4, and white has won the pawn back, and in my opinion stands really well. because now black can't castle without going like queen e7, and white has a better structure. I think the dark squared bishop is a really strong piece here. So definitely feels like white has a good position. And okay, I think there have been some games here where black continues with castling. But from my point of view, this position seemed very, very playable for white, where I have some weaknesses I can attack, and yeah, a lot of dynamics still left in the position. And if knight takes b4, this is just not very good at all because of knight takes e5. Essentially what's happened is that white has traded one of their queenside pawns for black's center pawn e5. And so I feel like strategically here white is doing extremely well. So after b4, my opponent spent some time and decided to take on b4. I don't think black has to take, but if they don't take, I was thinking maybe they could play a move like f6 to secure the e-pawn. Then I would either consider taking on c5 myself or pushing b5, and here it feels like white is getting more counterplay in the position. So I was definitely happy to kind of go into that. Instead came takes, and b5, which was actually a very surprising move to see. I wasn't anticipating it at all, mainly because it just opens up the diagonal, and that looks extremely risky. But there didn't seem to be a way for white to immediately take advantage of this. Like if I go knight takes c5, for example, which I definitely considered, you guys can see it's a mistake. Knight takes c5, takes, rook takes a7. White has a rook and 2 pawns for 2 pieces, bishop and knight, but we're still very much in a middle game. And in particular, I feel like black's light squared bishop is one day going to hurt me, either on the h3 square or on this diagonal at some point. And yeah, this middle game I just didn't like at all for white. And indeed, I think black is better, like knight b6, and yeah, black is very active. Okay, it's very concrete. I guess I can take the pawn on b5. I'm not sure what's happening there, but yeah, I didn't like it. Engine doesn't like it for white either, so definitely was good to avoid it. So I considered a couple different moves here, but now the important thing is that black is ready to go bishop takes b4, because I don't have this idea with queen a4 check. So after thinking a little bit more, I decided to go queen b3, just to defend the pawn. So now in bishop takes b4, I once again have knight takes e5 and queen b4, and this looked great for white, so I certainly wasn't worried about that. Instead came bishop d7. On bishop e6, my plan was to drop the queen back to b1, where I thought it would be well placed. And now the issue for black is that I'm actually threatening a move like knight g5, hitting the bishop on e6 and the knight on c6, and then of course that's threatening the exchange anyway. And so black has a hard time stopping this because of f6, I'm just going knight g5 anyway. So yeah, I thought this is kind of annoying for black, and so hence he goes bishop d7, so getting out of the way, because otherwise in this position after queen b3, knight g5 is already a threat here, hitting f7 and also opening up the bishop against the knight on c6. So yeah, bishop d7 made sense. I castle. And now comes queen e7. And queen e7 definitely caught me very much off guard because like optically it just looked wrong. Like putting the queen in front of the bishop and like neglecting the development. Surely I didn't think black is going to be, castling queenside anytime soon. But on the other hand, black does want to just take the pawn on b4. And I found myself getting a little bit psyched out here because, like, although I'm higher rated than my opponent, he's doing very well in the tournament. In fact, he's doing better than me. Like, my performance rating wasn't 2450 going into this game. My performance rating was something like 23, 100 or something, right? So he's clearly playing really well in the tournament and clearly a very underrated player. And he was playing, like, pretty fast. Like, not super fast, but, he's making his moves with a lot of confidence. And although like optically I didn't really believe it, like psychologically this definitely affected me because I had a very hard time kind of approaching this position. So I think my first thought here was to play knight d5, which I liked because after knight takes d5, queen takes d5, I have ideas of, well, right now I'm threatening to take on e5 with the knight using tactics on the diagonal, but I also just want to play d4 and blow open the center. Where, if black's king gets caught on e8, then of course white is going to be very happy there, even if I'm pawn down. But I didn't really see how black can even win the pawn, because right now knight takes e5 is a huge problem. So I was thinking like maybe black can go rook to d8, but then I could consider taking on b5 or going d4. In either case, I thought white is doing well here because there's no good discovered attacks with the bishop, right? Knight on c6 is hanging, and if knight takes b4, I think minimum I could just play queen takes e5. And I think in the endgame, white's initiative continues. I'm also threatening the a-pawn here, so this looked like it was, yeah, definitely going my way. Then I started thinking about it more. I started considering other options, and I ended up deciding to play d4, which I thought was stronger. So my idea on d4 was that if black takes with the pawn, then I would go knight d5 here. And after knight takes d5, queen takes d5, now I'm ready to go knight takes d4. And basically, I just thought this is a better version. I should actually go back here. If black did not play queen e7 and just played like natural moves, bishop e7, for example, well, then my plan was to very much go like rook to d1, castle, and blast through with d4. And here I thought white would be very happy because like ed4, knight d4 takes, let's say rook takes d4, and I have a lot of pressure. The rook on a8 is hanging, the a-pawn is a weakness, and there's targets on the d file. And so, yeah, white's position just looks incredibly good here. So queen e7, going after the pawn, I decide to go d4. If knight takes d4, then I would probably trade once. And I could take the rook on a8, but I think I just want a knight d5 here, which I thought is also just very, very annoying. Then after takes, queen takes looks okay. I think bishop takes maybe is even better. Just hitting the rook, waiting for the rook to move, and looking to play rook takes a7 and bishop f4. And yeah, black is just super far from castling, so this position looked tremendous for white. But on d4, black goes queen takes b4. And yeah, it simply blundered that like after I'm trading queens here, the bishop comes out and the knight on c3 is hit. So like I'm just not in time to get the initiative I was really going for. I guess because, okay, back here, the pawn is on d2, the knight on c3 is defended. So like somehow in my calculation, I hallucinated. I didn't realize d4, queen takes b4. And after trades, the bishop hits the knight anyway. So definitely I should have played knight d5 here. I think this was absolutely the right way to go. I think the computer says white can make a lot of moves like bishop b2, even just completely sacrificing the pawn and not worrying about it. Because after, let's say, queen takes b4, takes, I think here knight takes e5 is actually very strong. Because after knight takes e5, I take on a8, knight takes a8, and there's knight d5. So here white is just getting a huge initiative. So I don't think like the rook is necessarily facing the two pieces here. After bishop d6, rook takes a7. I think white is very likely winning some material, possibly just winning a full piece back. And so that would mean extra exchange for white, and yeah, completely winning game. So even like bishop b2 was possible, where probably black should go like f6 to defend the e-pawn, and then yeah, white is doing really well. I think here white can continue d4, and it's just a much better version because now in queen b4 takes, bishop takes b4, there's no threat to the knight on c3, so I can just take on e5, and the position is opening up. My two bishops are super powerful, and again, white is really happy. So, okay, I go d4, queen b4, takes. Now I'm forced to go knight a2. And here, yeah, I started kind of kicking myself because I felt like, why didn't I just go knight d5 a few moves ago? You know, it's a real problem when you realize like there was a much simpler move that you should have played, which would have been much stronger. And yeah, once you miss your chance, it's hard to kind of forget about it, right? And just focus on the game at hand. But anyways, we now reach this endgame, knight a2, bishop d6. And I wasn't feeling too terrible here, but of course I also wanted to be very careful because the issue for me is that black has these two passers on the queen side. And if these pass pawns start rolling, it could be really, really bad for white. So like one thing I was considering was d takes e5, knight takes e5, and then like bishop b2 here, or bishop f4 possibly. This I thought is okay for white because I'm hitting the knight, I'm threatening to take on e5. Had I taken on e5 here, I think bishop takes e5, bishop takes rook, black takes on a1. I didn't think white has anything here because my bishop on a8 is hanging, black is ready to castle, and black is up a pawn. But on knight e5, bishop b2, then if knight f3, bishop takes f3, either black has to give up the exchange or give up the g-pawn. But even this, like I wasn't totally sure, right? Let's say black plays rook b8, I take on g7, rook g8, I come back somewhere, probably bishop c3, I don't know, bishop d4, bishop c3 maybe, kind of runs into b4, maybe there's rook b1, but then a5. I'm not sure where the bishop should go, maybe bishop d4. Some position like this, I was actually very unclear about how to evaluate because I have 4 versus 2 on the king side, but 0 passed pawns, so it's going to take a lot of time for me to actually generate some counterplay, whereas black's pawns are just running very quickly, like a5, b4, and yeah, I thought this could turn sour for white super, super fast. So that one, okay, I think I was ultimately okay with it, but what I really didn't like about d takes c5 is also that black could kind of ignore it and just go like bishop c5 or bishop e7, which looks funky, but once again, white has 2 extra pawns on the king side, 5 versus 3, but 0 passed pawns, whereas black's pawns are very much being supported by the pieces, like bishop on d7, e7, the 2 knights, so I thought this could easily turn very ugly for white very quickly. So upon further thought, I decided to end up playing knight takes e5. And now my idea here is that if knight e5, then I would take the rook with bishop takes a8, knight takes a8, then I take back, bishop takes e5, rook to b1, and yeah, this I definitely felt like white should be fine. Although I was scared of this too, like the 2 passed pawns, you know, even down the exchange, like these pawns are just running up the board, black's king is nearby, so you never really know. But yeah, ultimately I was ready to go into that position. But on knight e5, black goes knight takes d4, which I definitely felt like was the more critical approach. And here actually I started to really dislike my chances because knight on e5 is hanging, e2 is hanging, so I thought I should go knight takes d7. I was thinking king takes d7. Let's say bishop takes rook. Knight takes e2 check is possible here, but I wasn't sure if this is actually something black wants to do, like after king g2, rook takes bishop, I go bishop e3. This felt very precarious for the knight, and so here I thought, even though black has 2 pawns for the exchange, rook e1 is coming, and so the knight is pretty awkward. So I didn't think this is what black wants to do. But after bishop takes rook, if black just recaptures, this position I had a really hard time evaluating because I thought black's pawns are just running. And although I'm up the exchange, it's just 1 rook versus the knight. And the knight is good when everything is on, you know, happening on one side of the board. And black's king can help with like king c6, king b6, and start running the a-pawn. And I remember some endgames I won myself as black down the exchange where I have 2 protected passers, where it's just like game over, especially because like the king was close, the king was supporting the pawns, and there's nothing the rooks could do to stop them. And yeah, I started feeling very concerned about this position because it just looked like black is having all the fun, all the play. I have an extra pawn on the king side, but it takes forever to get it moving. And yeah, I just had a very hard time believing that white was even better. In fact, I was thinking that I would rather be black in this position. So on knight takes d7, I offered a draw to my opponent, and I guess I kind of wanted him to accept because I was really not feeling great about this. I was thinking like king takes d7 is going to happen, and then black just gets these 2 pawns, and black's position is very easy to play, and so I kind of wanted to offer the draw before things got too out of hand. Then to my surprise, the opponent declined without really making a move. He just said no, which I appreciated because I wasn't, you know, I didn't have to wait around for the answer. And then he just kept thinking. And then of course, okay, this confirmed to me that, you know, likely he was just playing for the norm, and because he just kind of dismissed the draw very, very quickly. And yeah, after some thought, he goes and plays castle's queenside, which actually I was considering before we got into this position, because it is a move, because the knight on d7 is trapped, so black can potentially just win their piece back without even giving up the exchange, and then has these like 2 passed pawns on the queenside. So this I thought was definitely interesting, but once it actually happened on the board, I kind of snapped back into reality and realize like, yeah, there's no way that this can work for black. Just because like the bishop on g2 is very strong. Now my rook on a1 is super strong. Like, and the king on c8, I mean, is going to be a big target. Even though it's an endgame, white just has so many pieces here. And I felt like all I need to do is just get a rook to the c file, and I should be able to generate a huge attack. So after castles, I think white has a couple options. I was thinking even knight b6 check is reasonable, forcing black to take a b6. And now black is only up one pawn, and the pawns are doubled. So now black's pawns are very not scary at all. And here I just felt like white would have fantastic composition. Like I would definitely take white here, no draw, no way. And I would be happy to play this. But okay, I kept thinking like, well, I have a tempo that black owes me to capture the knight. So maybe I should be able to do something with this one. And so I found knight c3, which to me looked very reasonable because I'm opening up the rook. I'm activating the knight as well, but rook takes a7 is a huge threat. And if black plays a6 to defend the pawn, well, then I get knight b6 check, knight comes out to d5, I'm just up a piece. So knight c3, rook takes d7 was played, rook takes a7. Now I get my pawn back, and now I was definitely feeling really, really good about my position. Now black could play b4 here. And I forget exactly what I wanted in mind. I think probably knight a4 would have been my idea, followed by knight b6 check, if allowed. And yeah, here it just looks like white's pieces are taking over. So check, I go king h1. If knight takes c1, I can probably throw a knight b6 check here. But even if I just take back on c1, this position looked extremely difficult for black because white is just way too active here. And I have all these ideas with like knight b6 check. Okay, rook a8 is a mate in one threat. So yeah, I just thought this is really a disaster for black. Bishop h3 also, bishop c6, just like so many moves for white. I mean, I have the initiative, we have opposite color bishops, and the king is very open. So out on rook a7, bishop c5 was played. I drop back rook a2 just to cover the e-pawn. And yeah, basically I thought this position should be close to winning for white because it's just a matter of time before the pieces start to get in. So again, I thought maybe black should try b4, but then knight a4, I think, hitting the bishop, looking at the b6 square. If b3, just rook to b2, and I don't think black actually has enough here. Once the bishop moves away, then there's going to be e3 hitting the knight. If bishop a3, I have knight b6 check, and then I win the exchange, and yeah, this should be good for white. Eventually the rook comes to d1 as well, even if I give the exchange back on b2. I thought white is just doing well here. So rook a2, black goes rook h d8. And yeah, definitely a reasonable move because there were some cases where I was threatening ideas like knight d5 with the point that if black plays knight takes d5, then I would have rook a8 winning the exchange. And then, yeah, here I would be very happy. So rook h d8 is played. Bishop f4. Now I'm just trying to get the pieces out. Bishop b4. And here, okay, my first instinct was to go rook to c1. But I just needed to calculate what happens on knight b3. Because rook c1, knight b3 is annoying. If I go rook c2 in that position, then knight comes back to d4, hitting the rook. But then, okay, I thought for a few minutes and I found a pretty nice solution here. So rook c1. Now black really doesn't have a lot of choices here because I just have too many pieces lined up against the king. Now the rooks are perfectly placed. The bishops are perfectly placed. There are just so many mating ideas as well. Like I'm threatening knight takes b5 followed by rook a8 mate. So black did go knight to b3. And yeah, I was happy to have already seen knight d5 in advance, which is a very nice move. If knight takes c1, then the idea is knight b6 check. And rook a8 is mate, using the bishops and the diagonals. And otherwise, I'm threatening rook takes c7 or bishop takes c7. I'm threatening knight b6 check. I'm threatening knight takes b4. White just has way too many threats in the position. I mean, yeah, knight b6 is a mate in 2 threat, which is pretty huge. And if rook takes d5, then rook takes c7 check. And I didn't really calculate further than this. I just figured, okay, there's going to be something. Minimum rook d7 and rook takes d5 with an extra rook. So black played bishop d6. There's nothing really else to suggest. If bishop a5, I can take, among other things, take on c7. and white is just winning too many pieces here. So bishop d6 was played, but now the finish is pretty straightforward. I have rook a8 check. The king is forced to b7, and now it's just checks all the way through. Knight takes c7 check. Only move is king b6, and rook a6 was made on the board. So yeah, very nice finish. I was happy to end the game in style. I didn't feel great about my draw offer. And after the game, my opponent did confirm to me, we had a nice postmortem, that he in fact was playing for the norm, and so couldn't, had no intentions of taking the draw. But of course, it was a ridiculous draw offer on my end, because, I mean, on knight d7, like, white is better. After king takes d7, the engine gives bishop b2 as the best move, which is actually very reasonable, just hitting the knight first before taking the rook on a8, so just kind of reducing black's options. If knight c6, then rook comes to c1, so this is very unpleasant. And then if knight e6, for example, I can even go rook f d1. And okay, looking at it with the engine makes everything so obvious and just says, yeah, white is better. At some point you're going to take on a8 and just have a good position. Although I should say, it was saying that on, let's say, bishop takes a8 here, which was just kind of my original intention, rook takes a8, even though it likes white by a very small margin, something like 0.3, 0.4, yeah, it still felt like really risky to play this position. So this might be one I should look at later, just to see if my fears were truly justified or not, because I really thought, I really thought I could be in trouble here. But okay, objectively, I should not have offered a draw, and I was just kind of psyching myself out, thinking that, like, just being very afraid of these two pass pawns on the queen side, which is maybe a bias I have. Maybe I just need to work on these like complicated endgames with lots of imbalances. After castles happened, then of course I started feeling great about my position, and from here, I thought I handled the game very well. Especially I like bishop f4, rook c1, knight d5. This whole sequence was, of course, very, very satisfying to end the tournament with. So that was it. I finished with 6.5 out of 9 in the 2025 Grenke Open. I ended up gaining like another 2.5 rating points because I had a bad start. I started with 2.5 out of 4, 1 loss, 1 draw, playing down the whole way through. So to win the last 2 games, basically salvaged my tournament. It was kind of funny in these final 2 games. Both opponents could have made a draw if they wanted to. First game of the morning, in round 8, we had a repetition on the board that either player could have claimed. In this game, I straight up just offered the draw, and then I ended up winning both games somehow from positions that I didn't really like that much. So that was kind of fun. And yeah, I ended up gaining, adding another couple of points in Reykjavik too. So in these 2 tournaments, Reykjavik and Grenke, I ended up gaining something like 5 rating points total, which is not a lot. But these days, I'm happy to fight for every single rating point I can get. So now my FIDE is 2356. The road back to 2400 continues. Since Grenke, I then visited Hamburg to visit Chess Base, where I recorded a course, which is going to be out later this year, that I'm very excited about. And currently I'm in Spain, actually, for the Killer Chess Training Camp, which is ongoing right now. And there's going to be a tournament here as well that I'm going to be playing in a couple of days. So the chess grind continues. Look forward to more content on this channel. And once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. And hopefully I'll see you around. Take care.